We're in the house.
Let's do it.
Pattie Ehsaei.
Yes, sir.
Man, thanks for having us.
Thank you for having me.
So we are in Beverly Hills?
Yes.
Wow. Beverly Hills. So I want to get into how did you get to Beverly Hills? Because I don't think you're from California.
No.
I think you're from probably like a small town in Ohio or something.
No. I've lived in a lot of places.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I was an immigrant from Iran, and then we first moved to Beaumont, Texas.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because as an immigrant, most people don't realize you go where you have family, and that was the only place we had family. We had a cousin. My cousin went to school in Beaumont. So we were there for about a year, and then my mom just couldn't handle it. It was just too small. And then we moved to Houston.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was in Houston through junior high, and then I went to high school and undergrad in Colorado. And then I went to law school in Chicago. I was in Chicago for about 8 years. I practiced there, and then I've been in LA since 2001.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've been here for about 24 years
Yeah,
now.
and I call this home.
This is home.
This is home, not
So
going anywhere.
Houston's not home.
No.
Boulder.
No, I was only there for 4 years. No, Boulder's not home.
Boulder is in. So I've been to Boulder.
Recently because of Prime?
Yeah.
Of course.
I had to go see a game. I took my oldest boy.
Yeah.
We do all these daddy-son trips. So I went out there, looked at a couple investing opportunities. I have some team members that are part of my organization that's out there, but I had to go see Coach Prime in a football game as well.
Of course you did.
What I will say is, looking at Pattie and knowing who Pattie is, I don't see Pattie ever stepping foot in Boulder. like the way you even came in today, right? Just like flossed out. I mean, Pattie, you're always so meticulous and so well put together, and
thank you.
And just like you walk in a room, and the room gets brighter right away. That's one of the things that I like about you. And I have this whole list of sort of titles that you've held that I want to get into, but I don't see your aura, your essence in Boulder, Colorado, of all places.
Yeah, it's Boulder wasn't my thing. It's
imagine.
very grunge, it's very hippie. It's not very diverse. It's not very diverse at all. So those were the challenges that I had with Boulder. And I've always loved living in the big cities. I love living in Houston. It's a big city. And then we moved to Colorado Springs, and I hated that.
Yeah.
And then, and then I went to Boulder, great university, right? But didn't love the town. And then I went to Chicago for law school. So I love Chicago. I actually plan on living there a few months out of the year.
Okay.
Yeah, in the summers.
Well, let's get into it, because I wrote down a whole bunch of titles that you've held or hold, and I got questions about them. So we got lawyer, we have private equity and M&A, for you guys don't know what that is, mergers and acquisition, senior vice president of SBA lending, influencer with 1 million followers on TikTok, author, which I'm excited to get into your new book, content creator, speaker, coach. I think my favorite titles that I have down for you, though, for me, is mentor, which I consider you one of my mentors.
Thank you.
And down to earth and friend.
Ah, that's very kind of you. I consider you a good friend of mine, Jamil, as well. Thank you.
And I'm excited to do this because about a year ago, I was trying to figure out what do I want to be when I grow up.
Right.
And one of the things that's always fascinated me is how are high achievers. And I used to, when I was in pharmaceutical sales, my territory was like Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach, Ranchos Palos Verdes, on up to, what is that? What is that? With the big Ferris wheel, what's that city?
Santa Monica.
So all along the coast here in California, in Santa Monica, so you would have all of these homes and houses and $1 million estates, and I used to always wonder, how do people do that?
Right.
How do they do that? I felt like I hit the jackpot with getting a job at Johnson & Johnson and getting a company car.
Right.
But I was still living in 700 square feet with 2 bedrooms, and one was half of an office, and my son was in there. So I used to always wonder, how do we get there? So I guess my first official question for you is, what makes you different?
I think I have a tremendous amount of resilience. I think if there is one superpower that I have is to be able to keep going in the face of adversity. And I really think that that is what differentiates successful people from non-successful people. In that the successful people just hung in there longer. They were just more resilient. And, I've been through a lot of trials and tribulations in my life. You know my history. I wasn't born rich. I didn't have any money growing up. I lived in the hood. And the only difference is I just didn't give up.
Why not?
I think that I always wanted differently for myself. I would always say that I wasn't allowing my current situation to be my final destination. And I always had a dream for myself. And I think it came from when we lived in Iran, my family had plenty of money. So we were very, very comfortable. And so I saw the good life. I flew first class. I did all of that stuff. And my aunt, she was living in Kuwait, and she married a very wealthy man. So when I was around them, I was around affluence, and I loved it. It was great.
Right.
And then when we moved to the United States, we lost all of that. So I wanted to get back to that. I'm like, being broke sucks. I got to figure out how I am going to go back to that. So I think that is what was also driving me, is that I wanted to be successful.
Right.
And I also wanted to prove something to everybody because, I have dyslexia and ADHD. So it was really, really hard for me. Academics was hard for me, and people thought that I was stupid. And it wasn't that I was stupid. I just had a learning disability and still do. So I just had something to prove.
Yeah, I think that I've seen that with other high achievers as well. Do you think this ability to kind of like stick with it, to stay in there, to not give up, to face the fire, is that something that you're born with, or is that something that you feel like you've learned along the way?
I don't think anyone is born with that. I think we're all born, for some reason, we are all born with having imposter syndrome, not thinking that we're good enough, not thinking that we're smart enough, right? But I think the people that are successful are the ones that pretend. They act as if. So when you act as if, you're not going to let anything stop you, and you have to be very goal-oriented. So I think people that are successful have a goal, and they're going to stick to it no matter what happens. It doesn't matter what happens. Reality doesn't matter. We're just going to stick to it, and eventually we'll get there.
So what were some of Pattie's early goals then? Right? You were in Texas, of all places. It sounds like Mama was there doing her thing. Was Dad around?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
So Dad's there. Are they sort of giving you the kind of typical kind of like Persian, be a doctor, be a lawyer, be an engineer type of thing, or are these things not talked about?
No, absolutely. I mean, in my culture, I always say you're either a doctor, lawyer, engineer, or a disappointment, and you just don't have a choice. Education is really, really very important in our culture. So I didn't want to be a disappointment. So, earlier on, I was like, okay, because of my learning disability, I wasn't great at math. I'm like, there goes engineering. And I did like science, but I could always talk. Right. So I was able to speak, and I had good critical thinking skills. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm not that great at that, but I could be a lawyer.
Sure.
So I think that's where that was ingrained in me very early. And, education is so important in my culture, in that when I graduated from college, my parents barely showed up to my graduation because they were like, this is nothing.
Right.
Like, you don't get a prize for doing what you're supposed to be doing. Now, if you graduate from law school, then that's something that we can celebrate, but this is the bare minimum.
Sure. So do you remember when you set that goal to become an attorney, and who fostered that?
I think it it was me because I felt like I had no choice but those three things. That's the honest to God truth. Like, I felt like, okay, what am I going to do? And I didn't want to be broke, so I wanted to make money.
Right.
Okay. So I was like, okay, I guess I'll be a lawyer.
Okay.
That's really how it came about.
So because you guys had money when you were in Iran, do you think that helped? Do you think that foundation helped once you got here to the States? You're like, I feel like this is possible because we did it before, or did that shift a little bit for you because you're in a whole new environment and sort of starting from the bottom again?
I think it shifted because my parents weren't able to do it all over again, right? And that was because of the language barrier.
Got it.
So it shifted in that I knew that it wasn't going to be easy. I think it benefited me because I saw what it could be, what life could be,
Sure.
you know? And Cher has a very famous quote. She says, I've been poor, I've been rich, rich is better. And so I was like, rich is better. So I think that's where that came from. And I was like, okay, I got to hustle. If I want to get to that, I don't have parents that are going to give me money. My parents are going to give me money to go to school. They're not going to give me money to do any of that. So I got to make it happen myself.
Okay. I love that. Yeah, there's a quote that's out there that says, money doesn't make you happy, but we all want to see for ourselves. We all want to find out for ourselves, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, okay, so you graduate from undergrad. You already know that you want to go to law school.
Yes.
You probably applied to several different places.
I applied to a lot of places, and Jamil, this is, again, these are the things that people don't see. So because of my learning disability, I was doing well in my grades, but I had a very difficult time taking standardized tests. So my LSAT scores were low. They weren't where they needed to be. So I applied to 13 law schools. All of them said no, except the last one. All you need is one. And Loyola University Chicago said yes.
Wow.
And that's where I went.
So we were talking a little bit offline about this kind of concept of all you need is one.
Yeah.
Where have you seen that reign true in your life to where I think a lot of us think that we need these macro wins, right? We need all of this stuff to kind of take place for us to have the success. But I think it's in the micro where we really do find a lot of this success. Where have these outside of you having one law school say, okay, Pattie, like your test scores are low, but we'll still take you, and that was the one that you needed? Where have you also seen that show up for you?
I've also seen that in my jobs, right? So really coming out of law school, there's only one thing I wanted to do, and I wanted to be a criminal prosecutor. I didn't want to do anything else. And I only applied to the DA's office and, the district attorney's office, and that was the one that accepted me.
Right.
I got the job.
Yeah.
And even now when when I published my book, I wrote a book and I put it out, and there were, 10 to 12 publishers that showed interest. I had interviews with, I believe, 3 or 4 of them, and only one said yes. Only one. But again, that's all you need. That's all I needed. I didn't need 10 people to say yes. I needed one person to say yes.
Right.
And that was a win. That's a huge win. I think
what's so apparent to me that I really hope that the listener or the viewer is picking up on is the fact that I only need one. So I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to keep submitting. I'm going to keep calling. I'm going to keep showing up until I just get the one, like the one is out there.
Yes.
And I say that all the time, even when it comes to building teams, like I just need to find one freaking all-star in this department.
Right.
Or even if one person leaves, like I'm sad that they left, but I'm like, that's really just one person. Like there's a billion people that's out there.
Absolutely.
So we just need to find the one. So you do the attorney thing, but something happens. And I never understand this about you, and I'm so fascinated about it. But you do all of that work for undergrad to study for the LSAT, to go to law school, to practice as an attorney.
Pass the bar in 2 states
Pass
the
the
first
bar in
time.
2 states.
The first time.
And then you decided to do something that is so wow to me. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. So I had moved from Chicago to Los Angeles. And I moved because I was going to get married. And I realized very quickly that he wasn't the one for me, you know, once I moved here. And I was going to go back to Chicago. I was going to go back to being a prosecutor, you know, whatever. And I remember I was having a conversation with one of my friends, Beth Pfeiffer. She's one of my best friends. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking about coming back to Chicago. I broke up with this dude, you know, whatever. And I was already scheduled to take the bar in California. So it was like a month before the bar that I broke up with this guy. And I said, you know, yeah, I'm going to come back to Chicago. What do you think? And she gave me life-changing advice. And she said, you know what? You can always come back and plug your life right back in. You've been here. You're already out there. Why don't you just try it out? See what happens.
Right.
You know, like it's an opportunity for you. You're already there. And if not, you know, always come back. I was like, you know what? She's right. And I think I've shared the story with you, but I was at a job fair for one of my friends, with one of my friends. He said, just come along. And it was a sales job fair. And I had taken the bar at that time. I had taken the July bar, but you don't get the results until November. So there's a gap. And you know, I was speaking to the pharmaceutical salespeople, and I always thought I would be good in sales because, you know, when you're an attorney, you're selling your case to the judge or the jury. So I knew I'd be good in sales, but they wouldn't give me the time of day, Jamil. Those pharmaceutical salespeople, they were laughing at me. They're like, "Yeah, get out of here. You know, you don't know what you're a lawyer." So
that's how we were.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
Very fraternity.
Very.
Type of,
it was. Yeah, it was very much like that. So I was like, all right, F y'all. So I was waiting for my friend to be finished, and Wells Fargo just happened to be, their booth just happened to be right by where I was standing. And the guy behind the booth started talking to me. He started chatting me up. He was really interesting. And we just had a great conversation. And he said, hey, what are you here for? And I told him, I was like, yeah, but, you know, I'm really a lawyer. And he said, well, we're hiring in the merchant services department. And that's the credit card processing department of Wells Fargo. And in my mind, immediately I'm thinking, I'm a lawyer.
Exactly.
Like, I'm going to go schlep credit cards, you know? But luckily, I've always had long-term vision. And I think that's really important for success.
Yeah, talk about that.
So most people would have immediately been like, oh, no, I'm not doing this. But I started to ask questions. And I think another superpower I have is my ability to ask questions. So I said, okay, well, what are the advancement opportunities? And he started.
So you're not looking at the opportunity for what's right here in front of you. You're looking at it from a 10-year perspective down the road, what it can be, not what it is right now, but what it can be.
Absolutely. Okay. Absolutely. And that's the way I think I've been my entire life, luckily. So I said, what are the advancement opportunities? And when he told me, he's like, you know, if you do well within 6 months, you could be a territory manager. If you do well after that, 6 months after that, you could have my job because I'm leaving to go do, you know, something else. And I thought, you know what? I'm not doing anything, right?
Do you remember how much they paid you initially?
Yes. I think my base salary was like $40,000. Yeah. Yeah.
Balling.
Yeah, right. In Los Angeles, but there was income potential in the sales.
Right.
So, like, if I did well, I could make well over $100,000
with commissions.
Right, with commissions. Right. That's what I saw, and I've never cared about my base salary ever. I have never ever cared about my base salary.
So this is all so weird. I just have to say.
Okay.
I don't get it. Let me just rewind. And I want you to pick up. But you're about how old at this time?
30. I had just turned 30.
So you're 30. They offered you a base salary of $30,000 to $40,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that we're doing this because I think when people see you, when I see you, hell, the first time we were going to meet, I tell this story all the time. I was so nervous because I looked at your TikTok and like everything was so pristine and immaculate and we're going to have lunch. And I don't know what fork is the salad fork or the, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it's just so odd though that's your starting point. But I think that is so hopeful because like, I think I had a $30,000 base salary, you know, in my mid-20s or something like that. And I think that's probably where most people that are listening to this are very similar. But I want to rewind to you sitting with your friend and her saying, well, why don't you just try it out? That's such an odd decision because most people would go back to Chicago.
Great love and great achievement requires great risk.
But risk is scary.
It is. It's very scary.
Right?
But you have to be able and willing to put yourself out there. You don't know what's going to happen. I always say, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know if I don't put everything I have in this, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So if I give it my all, and nothing happens or I don't get what I want, then at least I tried, right?
And I can always go back.
Always go back. I could have always gone back to doing what I was doing, you know? And luckily I had a safety net. Some people don't, but I was like, I could always go back and doing that. But even if I didn't have the safety net, you know, I worked 3 jobs while I was in law school, full time. I went to law school full time and I worked 3 jobs, okay? I've never had I've never had less than 2 jobs until I moved to California. Even when I was a district attorney, because you're going to laugh, my salary was $32,000 in Chicago as a district attorney. I waited tables at night to make it work. Yeah. So I've always had multiple jobs. So in my mind, I'm like, if it doesn't work out, I could go back and wait tables and make a killing. I was making a killing because I was working at the high-end restaurants, right? So I've never been afraid of not having a job because I have done so much of my life that I've built so many skills that there are a million skills I can pull from that'll get me a job at any time. Right.
I think for being such a young person, though, at that time, a woman here in California, you know, it's a place you don't know very well. Maybe don't have a ton of friends that's here. It just seems odd to make those decisions where most people wouldn't. But then the bigger thing for me, and I really want to figure this out for myself, but have the listeners and the audience, there's a psychological and social and just pressure that comes with titles. So you have this great title of an attorney, which is dope. You walk into a room, they say, Pattie, well, what do you do? You say, I'm an attorney. And then to say, I'm going to be a sales rep for freaking credit card processing. Dude, that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, I know.
I wouldn't do it just because I don't want my friends to make fun of me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, let alone my parents.
Yeah.
So you mean you did all that schooling to go sell credit cards, processing machines? It doesn't, just that social pressure would be enough for me to say, there's no way. What? You didn't have any of that?
Of course I did. No, of course I did. You know, and they would kick me out of places, you know, we hate Wells Fargo. Can't you see the no soliciting sign? F you. You know, like I got so much of that. And my friends were like, what are you doing? But again, you know, I couldn't practice law anyway at that point because I was waiting for the bar results, right? So I was like, okay, well, let me get a job in the meantime and do this. And I saw the long-term potential.
Right.
That's what it was. I saw the long-term potential, and it was hell. It was brutal. You know, the first day. Have I told you the story about the first day? I think I did, but I'll share it again. You know, the first day, I have this like 20-pound credit card machine. I'm not kidding. It's this big. And I had my pitch book, which was huge, right? So I'm carrying these things. And I didn't realize that the Valley was the hottest area in LA. This was in September. It was like 110 degrees. I went on Ventura Boulevard because I wasn't really familiar with LA, and those were the only places that they had like walk-in businesses. And I was wearing like this red power suit with heels, Jamil, door to door to door. And I was there for 8 hours. I got kicked out of every single business. And I went to my car, and you should have seen my mascara was like running down my face.
Sure.
My hair was like a big poof. And I went to take off my shoe, and I wasn't able to take it off because I had a blood blister that was stuck to my shoe. That's how bad it was.
Right.
So, and I remember going home. I washed the day off me. I threw away the suit. I had to peel it off me. I'd like sweat through the suit. I washed it off, and I said, okay, where am I going to go tomorrow? I did that again the next day.
So how do I build that then? Right? Because I'm listening to this. I'm watching it. I'm in my early 30s, mid 30s, maybe even my 40s. I want that. I want that grit. I want that. And I want that defiance.
Yeah.
How do I get it?
Well, I think you have to be able to give up immediate gratification for long-term gain. And I think that is one of the biggest problems with the youth today is that everyone is an immediate gratification.
Right.
They are not willing to put in the time or the energy or the pain it takes now to get what they want in the future.
Sure.
So what you want in the future, that has to be more important to you than any pain that you're incurring right now.
Right.
That is the only way you get there. If what you want in the future is not more important than you feeling good right now, you're never going to get there.
So I got to have some sort of vision. I got to see something that's out there that's pushing me towards the thing or pulling me towards the thing that's bigger than my current comfort level.
Absolutely. Like I said, I've never let my current situation be my final destination, even today. Even though I'm, and it's not bragging if you can do it. I'm super successful.
Right.
I have more money than I know what to do with, right? But I'm not happy with my current situation.
Yeah.
This isn't my final destination.
Which I want to get into. Let's hold on that. Okay. So you finish this first day. You obviously do well. I believe you become one of the best sales reps in the company.
Within 4 months, I was the #1 sales rep in the country.
How?
Sheer determination. I went back and kept going back and kept every single day. And, you've been in sales before. So what you do is, all right, this pitch didn't work. Let me try it this way.
Sure.
You keep refining your pitch. You keep refining it. And my first sale was this huge car wash that I went to every single day. I bothered that guy daily. And he was Persian like me. So I would speak Farsi to him, and finally, he's like, you know what? I'll give you a shot. And that is really when things changed for me, is he gave me a shot. It was a huge deal. I won the deal. And then after that, since I won the deal, and then I started generating a lot of business, and then he referred me to his friends.
Of course.
So I'd be like, hey, so I did a good job for you. Do you have, you can't be afraid to make the ask in sales or in anything in your life, right? I always make the ask. So what about your friends? So he referred me to his friends. So then they all, Persians have businesses.
Sure.
So then it just kind of got out there. Yeah. And, I did a really good job for my customers and clients. I still do. I think that's one of the reasons that I'm successful. And that's how I started winning in the job.
And I will say, that is something you're so good at. Even if I send you a text, I'm getting a response like, you could be in the middle of something like there's certainly not 24 hours that's going by.
No, never.
And you're still doing that now.
I still do it with every single one. I will respond to everything immediately if I can, if not by the end of the day. I will never let 24 hours go by before I respond to something.
Did somebody teach you that? Was it a sales manager? Was it somebody who sort of oversaw you that taught you this stuff?
No, I'm just very impatient. That is the truth. I have zero patience, and I need things done immediately. Right. So I know how I want someone to respond with me and act with me, and that's the way I act with others. And actually, I had a client tell me this the other day. It's interesting you say that. And he said, you know what, Pattie, your biggest pitch for why anyone should work with you is the way that you do business. And it's because you respond so fast, so quickly. You know, he texted me. He's like, hey, can we talk about this? I'm like, yeah, are you free now? He's like, I never get that.
Yeah.
And I really try to do that with all my clients.
Okay. So you become best sales rep in the company, 4 or 5 months or something like that. And then you get promoted to...
Yeah. A few months later, I was the territory manager. Okay. And then my team was doing really, really well. So in that position, you produce and you manage. So my team did really well. Yep. And then 6 months after that, my manager left like he said he was going to. I applied for the job, and there were a lot. Jamil, you'd laugh. Like, there were people that had been doing this job for years that had applied for this job. Mm-hmm. And I went in acting like I deserved it, acting like I should get the job, and they bought it.
And how much did they pay you at that time? Do you remember roughly?
I think my base at that time went up to like 90 to 100,000.
So it was a little bit of a jump.
Yeah.
In terms of your base, but you probably been killing it with commissions.
Yeah, right. I was making commissions. So, and as a sales manager, you'll make bonus, right? Yeah. Based on what your sales team makes. Mm-hmm. But I would have probably made more money in sales.
It stayed in sales.
Yeah.
What was it like? Do you remember the first time you made $100,000? Yeah,
that was the first time.
That was the first time?
That was the first time I ever made more than $100,000.
What did it feel like?
Great. Great. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it felt really good. I'm like, okay, I'm moving on up. That's the way I saw it. But 100,000, it was only cool for about a month or two. And then I'm like, well, I need to make more than this, especially living in LA, and so yeah, I had always set my standards to just be better in everything that I do.
Did you set your income standards based off of the different roles that the company provided, or did you set your income standards independently of that? You know what I mean? Like, so from where you were now, you have much more responsibility, overseeing a lot more people. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there was 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 other steps as you could move up. So did you look at those and be like, okay, if I do a good job here, my next step is here, so I'm going to base my income off of that? Or how did you set your income
again, long term, right? I'm like, okay, I want to make this amount of money.
Right.
What do I need to do to get there? And again, a lot of people don't understand that road is circuitous. Like, you don't get there right away. People don't get that. Do you know how many crappy jobs I had to do to get to where I am today? Yeah. Like, how much crap I had to do that most people would never be willing to do.
Yeah.
But those are all stepping stones. Sure. You're not going to get there in one step.
Right.
You're going to go up. You're going to come down. You're going to go to the side a little bit. You know, sometimes you just have to be willing to take it. It's so true. 2 steps back or a step back to take 2 steps forward. So I've always been willing to do that. I've always been willing to do that because I was always willing to bet on myself.
Right.
Bet on yourself. And when I bet on myself, I always win.
Along this way, because now we're making over 100,000. We're starting to... I remember growing up, I had this friend, my best friend. In the 4th grade, he told me he was going to be an attorney. Now he's an attorney. Probably the best thing that ever happened to me was meeting that guy. Because he was just futuristic. He just saw everything in the future, knew exactly what he was going to do. I just wanted to play handball. Like, how can we play kickball? But he was just always so gifted with determining what the next step was. And I remember him always talking about there's a difference between making money and what you're doing with the money.
Yes.
So now you're starting to make 6 figures, which is something that a lot of people are after. At what point in time did you realize that there is that difference? There's a difference between me making 100,000 in a year and me now needing to make the right decisions with that money. What were you doing with your money?
Let me tell I was blowing it. I was blowing it. Even when I was making $30,000 a year, I was blowing my money.
Wow.
I didn't understand because as an immigrant, we're not taught financial literacy. Like, I didn't know any of that. I was buying stuff that I had no business buying. You know, it was just all for the show, right? It was all for the show. And it wasn't until I wasn't contributing to my 401k because I'm like, I can't afford to contribute to my 401k. That mentality,
right,
you know, like I need the money now. Yeah. And I can't afford that. Not understanding that, yeah, you contribute. Your employer is contributing. That's money you're leaving off the table, you idiot.
Yeah.
Right. And then at the end of the year, you're going to get money back because you're lowering your taxable income. Didn't get any of that. Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until my mid-30s when I was $30,000 in credit card debt. And I was making good money, you know? And I was like, that I finally started to realize that I got to make a change. Yeah. And it came about is, you know, we were talking about hope is not a strategy. It came about when I was coaching one of my people and I said, how many calls are you going to make this week? He's like, I'm hoping to make 50. I said, hope is not a strategy, right? So then he walked out and I'm like, wait a minute. This applies to you. Every year you're hoping to be financially responsible. You're hoping to do this. Hope is not a strategy when it comes to finances either. And that's when I got my shit together. And that's when I really started to focus on budgeting, learning about financial literacy, learning how to invest, learning what to do with your money.
Sure.
And I missed out. Jamil, if I had started to invest 10 years earlier, by the time I retire, I probably have given up $2 to $3 million.
Sure. So talk about that then. Let's rewind to when you're 25. What would you wish you would have been doing at 25 as opposed to what you started doing at 35?
I wish that I would have started investing in my 401k.
Yeah.
First of all, immediately. I wish that I had started getting on a budget immediately and understanding that part of that budget is putting money away for investing, putting money away for savings, putting money away for your emergency fund. I didn't know any of that. And I wish that I just hadn't bought all the shit that I didn't need.
Yeah.
Just to floss, just to act rich, pretend I was rich. That's what it was about. And it's amazing what happens when you stop looking rich. You can actually start to build wealth.
Let's go.
Yeah, and I didn't understand that.
Yeah, I just got goosebumps from that.
Yeah.
Have you seen that in your industry? Because I mean, holy cow, Pattie, you have... What I love so much about your story is I think a lot of people will look at you and say, oh, she got up here. She just got up here because she got up here. But if you really peel back the layers, you see that your story is one thing leading to the next.
Yes.
Literally from the bottom.
Yes.
And
from
it's
nothing.
that one thing that led to the next. Okay. It was, I got a sales position, okay? That bumped me up to a territory manager, and then that bumped me up here, and then that bumped me up here. And now you've been in positions to where you've raised millions of dollars. You've been part of organizations to where, you know, they're in probably the highest part of investing that you can get in, likely, you know, private equity. You've seen lots of people that have a lot of money. What do you see those folks doing, like the people that have for real wealth? What do you see them doing that's different than others who maybe pretend?
Is that they are investing their money. That is the number one difference. Yeah. Even today, you know, I have clients that come in that, you know, want financing for their M&A deals, right? And when I see the client pull up in the Lamborghini, in the Ferrari, with the Gucci on, and, you know, the fancy watch, that client 9 times out of 10 is broke on paper.
Wow.
9 times out of 10.
But we wouldn't think that.
And in the beginning, I didn't know. It's after, you know, this client comes in looking rich, right?
Sure.
And then you look at their financial statements, and their car payment is $5,000 a month. No joke. $5,000 a month for your car
Right.
payment, right? They're living, in the most expensive place. They're sending their kids to the most expensive private schools just to keep up with the Joneses,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Have the Chanels, whatever. And when you look at their bank accounts,
Sure.
they have nothing. They're literally living paycheck to paycheck.
Sure.
Right?
Even though they might be making $500,000
Oh, yeah.
a year.
I have this
$1 million a
doctor
year.
making $3 million a year living paycheck to paycheck.
I see it.
Right?
Yeah.
But what I also realize is the people that I didn't take seriously at first, the people that walk in with shorts and a t-shirt driving the Honda, those are the people that are wealthy.
Can you explain what the
Yes.
difference between, maybe rich and wealthy, or making a lot of money and as
Yeah.
opposed to having a lot of wealth?
Well, I always say, rich screams, wealth whispers.
Talk about it.
So anytime you see a person that is looking like they're rich,
Sure.
9 times out of 10, they're just screaming because they are not wealthy. I
Wow.
promise you that. I promise you that.
Sure.
Right? There are exceptions to the rule, right?
Yeah, for
But I
sure.
mean, if you look at the top CEOs, right? The wealthiest people, they're not wearing Gucci because they're not stupid. They're like, I don't need to spend $500 on a t-shirt just
Right.
because it has a logo.
Sure.
Right? And this really became clear to me when I was vacationing in Lanai, and that's Larry Ellison's private island. I was there one Christmas, and everybody there was billionaires.
Sure.
Everybody. They had yachts, except me. But, they had the yachts. And I was sitting next to a guy that was the CEO of a fashion house. I'm not going to name it, but one of the most famous fashion houses. This guy had on a t-shirt that said like something on it, something Hawaii, something
Right.
weird, and then I realized who he was. But when I looked around, I didn't see anybody wearing labels, anybody. So I said to him, I said, gosh, I go, none of the people around here, none of your buddies are supporting your business. They're not wearing X. And he looked at me, he goes, we don't market to billionaires. We market to millionaires. And I said, what do you mean by that? He goes, the billionaires have nothing to prove.
Wow.
He's like, they're not going to buy my product.
Come on now.
My product is not going to make them feel good about themselves.
Sure.
He's like, it's the millionaires and under that feel like buying my product makes them the rich when they're not.
So what is it then? Why do we do that? Why do we feel such an incessant need to fit in, to wear what looks cool, to be persuaded by culture? Because we do it whether we're poor, whether we're middle class, and it sounds like even if we're millionaires, we still will be swayed to do these things. Why is that the case, in your opinion? And I guess what can the listener or the viewer do to sort of break free of that?
It's because we have been conditioned to believe that we're not good enough. And the way that we validate ourselves is through items, through showing off to people. The same exact bag will make you feel differently if it has a Gucci or a Louis Vuitton on it. The same exact bag. Same exact quality. Because it's a status of wealth. And you want to tell the world that you're wealthy and I'm better than you. That is why we carry those items and we wear that stuff, because we're all insecure.
Come on now.
Yeah.
Talk that talk.
No, really, it's all about insecurity. And once you really start to be secure within yourself and know that that stuff does not mean anything, doesn't validate you, that's when financial freedom actually begins. Because then you are not bound by showing off to everybody else, showing them. And this is really one of the main reasons I always say this, that I don't have that many followers on Instagram. I have 1 million followers on TikTok, but like 8,000 on Instagram, because I am not a look at me type of person. Look at my purse. Look at me on a private jet. Look at me doing this. Look at me doing that. And it's all fake.
You are literally saying what I have been feeling for a while. It's actually been a little bit difficult for me to like be in this space right now, because that's not my brand.
No,
that's
I
not
know.
me.
I know.
And I was just writing about this too. Like even when was like, okay, we're going to launch the Difference podcast. We're really going to build out Think Life is Different. And I kind of got like a brand manager. And that was one of the first things she said to me. It's like, you got to be more flashy and more showy. And I remember sitting at the lunch, and I was just like, well, that's not me.
Exactly.
And there was this dissonance that it set in. The reason why I left pharmaceutical sales to go run my own organization was that I never wanted to wear another watch again. And I never wanted to put on another suit again unless I wanted to.
Right.
And now I felt like I was in a position to where it was like, okay, you need to make a decision. Do you become relevant in this space, or do you sort of stick to who you innately are? And it was like this dissonance that was happening, this ping pong ball that was going back and forth. So how do we get to a place to where we love ourselves enough to not feel like we have to show up and show out in ways that may not be congruent to who we actually are?
Yeah, I think to change anything, you have to be sick and tired of being sick and tired, right? And you have to just really understand that what you want in the future is not going to happen with the actions that you're currently taking. And again, if you really understand that your need to buy designer comes from insecurity, if you really, really understand that, then you can start working on yourself, whether it's through therapy or self-talk. And it's not going to be easy. Nothing is easy when you do it in the beginning. Nothing. It's like your brain is a muscle. You need to keep working at it. Even now that I know all of this, even now, right? I still get tempted. To, buy that super expensive purse or, whatever it is. But now I've built the muscle in my brain, which tells me, are you out of your mind? What are you doing? Do you know if you bought X amount of stock with this, do you know how much that will grow? That's the way I always think.
Right.
Is okay, instead of spending $7,000 on a Chanel purse, if I put that in the stock market, what are going to be my returns?
Exactly.
That is the way I think about every dollar that I spend. And I live way below my means.
Right.
Way below my means. And I plan on living way below my means. My friends are like, come on, you can afford it. I'm like, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should spend it. And a lot of people get stuck doing that. It's, I can afford it. Yeah, but affording it for now, what are you going to do for your future?
Exactly. So then, I guess for my final question, can anyone build wealth?
Absolutely. 100%. You just have to have the discipline. That's what people don't have. People are not disciplined. And what you need to do in order to build wealth is you need to spend less than you make. That's the first part, right? That's the beginning. You go on a budget. You figure out how much you're going to contribute to your investments, how much is going to go to your emergency fund, in your savings. And you do that on a regular basis. Consistency is key.
Yes.
And there's nothing else in the world that is going to give you between 8 to 12% returns in the long run than the stock market.
Let's go.
And every study shows that if you're in the stock market for at least 15 years, you have 0% chance of losing your money.
Right.
0.
Yeah.
So it's the long run, right?
So those are pretty good odds.
Those are great odds. That's a great deal. I'll take that all day. The problem is that people hear about, this person bought Apple stock and now is rich. Those are aberrations.
Right.
That's an aberration. Single stocks can go to 0 at any given time. Tesla almost went to 0. Was a month away from bankruptcy. Tesla, right?
Yeah.
So you don't buy individual stocks. You buy index funds and ETFs every single month. You set it up automatically from your bank account. The money goes into your investment account, and your investment account buys X amount of ETFs and index funds.
Boom.
Every single month. That is it. You set it and you forget it. You don't even think about it. You don't even need to look at the stock market. My friends, Jamil, are sitting there sweating bullets when the stock market's down. I'm like, I don't even know. Right. I don't even care because I'm in it for the long run. It doesn't matter to me. Yeah. I'm not relying on that for my income. That's for my future, right? So, and eventually the stock market goes up. It always does.
Yeah. I love your story so much because I think it takes excuses out. You know?
Yeah.
Like, if I was listening to this 13 years ago, I would say, okay, I got a shot. I'm in sales.
Right.
Right? Like, 13 years ago, I was so far away from building wealth. But my base salary was $72,000 a year with commissions and bonuses on top of that. Like, that's way more than enough to get started. And I love what your starting point and to look at what you've done in your life. It's just truly inspiring.
Thank you, Jamil.
You're so amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, you inspire me as well. You came from nothing and you built such an amazing, amazing organization that truly impacts and helps people. So I'm very proud of you. That's really great.
Well, you guys, Pattie Ehsaei. What makes her different on the difference. Pattie, thanks for doing this.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.